Welcome everybody. This is the part of the What Works series. My name is Madeline Schultz, and I'm a part of the alumni relations team here at SAIT. And I'm thrilled that you've all joined us and our very special guests for this evening's conversation. Before we begin, in the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge that we live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, Kainai, Piikani, Tsuut'ina, the Stoney Nakoda, and the Métis Nation 3, and all people who make their home in the Treaty 7 region of Southern Alberta. The What Works speaker series was developed in response to the feedback we received from you, our SAIT alumni. The focus of this series is on career development, industry connections, and how SAIT can be a lifelong partner in both your education and your career. This evening, we'll be talking about the necessary digital skills to adapt to the changes we're seeing in our work and our lives. We are joined by 4 very special guests: SADT Chief Catalyst Jim Gibson, Instructor Lloyd Summers, and 2 recent Bootcamp learners, Silvia and Charmaine. To those who submitted their questions in advance of this event, thank you. I'll be keeping an eye on the Q&A area throughout the conversation, so we encourage you to post questions throughout, and we'll follow up towards the end with those questions that were posted in the Q&A. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Jim to tell us a bit about himself and begin the conversation. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you, Madeline, and thanks everybody for taking the time at this end of your day to have a conversation about the School for Advanced Digital Technology and digital training and adoption. I'm just delighted to be here. As Madeline said, I'm the chief catalyst for the School for Advanced Digital Technology, and yeah, I have to tell you that the idea of having a title called chief catalyst raises a few eyebrows every time I mention it, and I take great pride after 6 months in the chair that the role and the title was very well chosen for what the school is trying to be. And so, in traditional times, we would stand up a school and we would create something called a dean that would run it, and off we would go and build a group of programming and so forth. But the leaders of SAIT and David Bissett, who gave the foundational gift for the school, had something different in mind. And the chief catalyst, and the word catalyst is a very powerful word. It's a word that says that we will cause other things to happen without ourselves being changed. And I think that's a very powerful concept, and that speaks to the heart of what we're trying to do at the school. So I have 2 goals in standing up the School for Advanced Digital Technology. It's to create the programming and skilling and reskilling and changes that we need to help us engage with the digital economy. Number 1, that's for everybody in the city of Calgary or Alberta or across the world. But secondly, to actually catalyze the changes within SAIT itself, to actually be a transforming agent of all of the great things that we've been doing for 104 years and rethink how we invent and reinvent ourselves for this coming world. So I'm just honored to be a part of this. As I say, I'm 6 months into the chair. We've got lots of really exciting things to talk to you about today, and especially very interested in the conversation with SAIT alumni. You've already have a connection to the school. You've already come through the journey, and the alumni is especially interesting to us in this era of transformation. Many of you have come through the SAIT organization. You have your degrees or your certificates or diplomas, and now you find yourselves in the world of work that is itself digitally and completely transforming. And so you're looking at yourself and your career and saying, what's next? What do I do to make sure I'm relevant? And SAIT takes that very, very seriously. And we recognize that there's wonderful opportunities to connect with you and in your journey. And so with that, I'm just delighted to have 3 folks here with me today. Lloyd, who is more than just an instructor, he's co-founder of Red Iron Media. He is an absolute force of nature and change in our city around the understanding of new modalities of training and learning. And Lloyd, just delighted to have you here, and I'll get you to just speak a little bit about yourself. We have Silvia and Charmaine, who have just about in the next day or so finished the first our first boot camp in machine learning, and they're just ready to tell us all about what that's all about to help you understand it. So I'm just delighted to have you all, and I'm going to get you to introduce yourself individually now. And so I'll start with you, Lloyd. So, as co-founder of Red Iron, as an instructor, you've joined our boot camp process. And tell me a little bit about yourself and just your connection to what's going on at All Things SAIT.
Yeah, thank you so much. And before Red Iron, my experiences were all over the place. I'm informally trained, so I worked in construction. I was a medic in oil and gas. I was on a hazmat team. I worked at Smart Technologies when it was tiny until it grew. I worked at Suncor. I worked as a project manager dealing with $100 million large projects. And I just had a very fortunate career path of exploration. And to me, education is important because it can partner with that to give you the knowledge behind the reasoning why. And it's been fascinating to me the number of times where I'll work on a project and after 10 or 15 years, I develop a methodology and I find out that it's something you learn year one in programming that, is something I had to find the hard way. But yeah, so I guess quickly about me is I made about 250 mobile apps and games VR experiences. And now our company's building software for hospitals, post-secondaries, industrial companies. We work on 8 to 10 different projects in a month. And the projects we say that we make are teaching people to walk again and saving lives. And so very important work. And I'm very excited to be part of the SAIT program, teaching all of that to other people so that they can follow in those footsteps too and figure out if they don't work for a company, how can they build their own company to do something similar? So thank you for having me here today.
My pleasure and delighted, and we've got lots more to work on together over the next months and years ahead. So I'm delighted to have you a part of it. Silvia, you told me just a second ago that you just finished you actually did your presentation on the last day of the boot camp. Tell me a little bit about yourself and why you chose the boot camp and tell me what your experience has been like.
Well, thank you so much. To tell you a little bit about myself, I've been working as a project manager for the last 9 years here in Calgary, and I've been mainly working in the power industry, which is really tied to the oil and gas. So I've been always immersed with projects that has engineering, procurement, and construction. And once I saw myself without a job, just before the pandemic, I said, well, I have to do something. And just when you said about, you need to do things to be relevant. So that's what I thought about myself. I said, well, you have this experience, you know how to manage a project, but probably it's time for you to look at other horizons and see what the future might bring. And little did I know that the tech industry in Calgary, it's kind of like a booming. And when I saw from SAIT that advertisement that, we have the first applying machine learning program, and I was so excited because it was addressed for mid-career professionals that wants to upskill. So I saw myself there, and I took the chance to enroll, and here I am. I just finished today with the final presentation.
What a fantastic story. And I'm just, you hang on to some of those thoughts because I'm going to come back to them because you've touched on some things that are very deeply embedded in our philosophy of what we're trying to do at SADT. So thank you. Hold on to a couple of those thoughts. I'll come back to them. Charmaine, same question. Tell me a bit about yourself and the reason why you chose and how has it been? Tell me your story.
So a little similar to Silvia, actually, although I wasn't a project manager or anything. I come from oil and gas. I have 8 years of experience as a piping designer. I actually graduated from SAIT in 2012 from the engineering design and drafting technology program. And from there was hired directly from the company that I worked for the past 8 years. Before I was laid off, I was part of a project where I was the co-creator and the subject matter expert for an in-house app that we developed. This app optimized the workflow efficiency of technical drawings. And then unfortunately, we weren't able to complete the app, but that's kind of what sparked my interest in tech. So when I got laid off, I was trying to think of how can I pivot, not really pivot, but how can I upskill to get more involved in tech. I feel that tech is always improving, and I want to also improve myself. And this just felt like the right fit. And on top of that, the start date of this program was lined up perfectly with my last day of work. So I was like, well, this happened for a reason. So let's give it a try.
You didn't skip a beat.
Yeah, exactly, which was nice.
Which is excellent. Well, and I understand you're doing your presentation tomorrow.
Yes, that's correct.
So you're not quite done. I'm actually going to see you guys tomorrow when we finish up. So I'm going to have a conversation. Those are really great stories, and I think within both of your stories lies a bit of the secret to what we're trying to do here, both at SAIT, but also broadly. I want to be careful to. This is not only about SAIT, though it is the SAIT alumni. It's about what we're trying to do as a city, and what we're trying to do for making sure that we all see ourselves in the future. Because if we don't see ourselves in the future, we won't see ourselves in Calgary, and we take that quite seriously here at SADT. So, Lloyd, I'm going to come back to you, and then I'm going to come back to Silvia and Charmaine. I want to talk a little bit about some of their reasons and some of their experiences in the boot camp. But specifically for you, Lloyd, talk to me a little bit about how industry plays, how you're in the business of developing, leading edge virtual reality and XR type of technologies. But at the end of the day, you don't work for SAIT. You work for Red Iron, and you're very successful. But you put up your hand and said, that sounds like something I want to work on. What is the relationship between, generally industry and something like these boot camps, and how does that work? And specifically for Red Iron, how do you see that working?
Yeah, and that's such a great conversation, and we're adapting every day, because one thing we've realized at Red Iron is the technology is so new that we barely understand the best product management methods for that. What we've realized over the last while is, especially in VR, we're a hybrid of multimedia and coding. So if you're not the greatest coder, you can still do amazing work. And if you're not the best artist, you can still do you can still do amazing work. And it comes in this interesting intersection where a project might only be 2 months, 3 months long, which is so short. And at the end, if you make a mistake, somebody's going to not rehabilitate themselves properly, or, there's impact to the decisions you're making. And so it's very complex because you're getting these unusually compressed timelines with a lot of focus on imagery and not so much on the technical side, which when you're working with somebody who's doing machine learning, for example, it's really hard to give them quality data, because you've only got 2 months to build it, to find all the data you're going to give them to create a model, and the product and project's done. And so what we're finding with the industry is it's transforming the way companies like ours work. The way we approach projects are changing. It's got to be faster, smarter, leaner. And what we're also finding is that across the industry, after what happened with COVID, plainly speaking, every industry's taken a step back and gone, how do we digitize? Our people can't come to work anymore. Our staff is changing. Everything we're doing is changed. And so you got every industry taking a look at it going, how do we get online and how do we do that fast? And what I think industry is going to cause is, I don't think that technology can be separated from businesses anymore. I mean, in the construction space, we started to see GPS units and data units getting embedded into all our technology. I mean, cars have more computer chips than they do resistors or fuses these days. And now that we've had this digitization of all industries had to kind of digitize to some degree to stay alive. I don't know that we're going to be able to go back. I think that what happens now is everybody takes a step back and you go, what am I capable of learning? And how does it tie into something I love to do? And you're going to end up in kind of a hybrid. I think everybody, to a little bit of is going to get their hands dirty with technology now, which is kind of exciting because it makes it less scary a little bit. My mom always told me, go ahead and break something and just figure out how to put it back together. So she encouraged me to always like break into electronics and things growing up. And I feel like that's now happening to companies all around the world. They're breaking themselves up and trying to learn how to do stuff again. And it's an exciting opportunity if you get rid of that fear factor just a little bit. So.
Oh, that's a great conversation, and it's a bit of a lens into the reality for both Silvia and Charmaine and people in the boot camps, is that there's this, especially coming from established industries where the processes are established and they take some time and it's hard to move them and break them. Whereas in some of the startups that are emerging, you're still inventing that. And I want to connect what you just said to what Silvia talked about, is she comes from the world of project management. And you yourself, Lloyd, said, we're not even sure what project management means anymore, but I know I need it. And there's an interesting concept. And so, Silvia, you said something that said, I'm a project manager, and I recognize that I could take some of those skills and apply them in new ways and overlay them with something new. Is that how you approach the boot camp, to with confidence coming from your background?
Well, yes and no. The yes part is for sure. There were so many skills that I feel confident to bring into the boot camp. But as Lloyd mentioned, I face the fear factor, because everything that is unknown, and it's when somebody talks about technology, you always feel like, okay, so I was kind of like doubting about my level of confidence. Like, to your point, you come from a very well structured methodology, where the way that you do your job, your projects, and all of a sudden you come into, okay, well, you know what, this is the boot camp. We're going to teach you these things, how you're going to deal with certain data, what are you supposed to get out of it. And then and it was fascinating to me to think that the fear was only in my brain. So I really enjoy the fact that the bootcamp gives you the opportunity to work on that platform that it's in the bootcamp, and whether you also can apply if you have, let's say, background coding, so then you can also apply that, but it was not fundamentally necessary to participate in the bootcamp. And that's why mainly I loved about it, that it didn't refrain me from getting to know more about it and enrolling into the program.
Lovely, and Charmaine, I think that's an important point that Silvia brings up, is this idea that the boot camps, the way we design them, are deep enough to give you some, obviously push some skills, but they're not so daunting to get involved. Did you find that, or what was your feeling in terms of the depth that you were required to come in and the depths that you got to within the program?
Yeah, I really didn't know what to expect. I have zero experience in anything coding or anything like that. And I found that in the class, there was just such a wide range of experience levels. Like, some people knew how to code. They would talk about languages, and they'd be talking about coding languages, and it would just go way over my head. And I'm just like, oh, okay, well. But the instructors were very accommodating to everyone's different levels. We did touch on coding. The coding part of it went really quick. But it was good to have the basis of it. But it was, yeah, I didn't really need to go into it with a lot of knowledge of coding or anything like that. But coming from oil and gas, I found that a lot of us did have a lot of transferable skills.
Good. Now, so let me stick with you for a second, and I'm not picking on you at all. That's not. But you said something as well that really is fascinating, is that you literally finished your job and the next day started the boot camp. As you now are completing the boot camp, if you don't mind me asking, what's next on the job search? Has this given you a sense of what's possible, and what is the connection to what's next for Charmaine?
Yeah, for sure. I'm going to continue to look for jobs. I think this is the first step. I'm going to also continue to look for other courses to continue to upskill. This was a great boot camp, and from what I've learned from the beginning to end, for example, I was just going through my final presentation. As you mentioned, it's tomorrow. So I was just trying to review everything and to make sure that I've covered all my bases, and going through some of the old slides from the beginning. And I'm like, oh, I know all of this. Like, this is all covered in my presentation. This is great. So I feel like I've come a long way. I'll continue to take courses, as I said, but I will continue to look for jobs in tech. SAIT is great because like we have a career specialist assigned to each one of us. And I meet with her every other week, and she's been really helpful. She helps me review my resume and lets me know if there's any job postings available and whatnot.
The language we use inside the school is inside of DX is this notion of concierge, the white glove, is to say everybody's pathway through this journey is different. It's unique to everybody. We're coming at it from a whole bunch of different inputs and outputs, and so we're trying our best to wrap a lot of the programming with concierge kind of white glove service to say, just because you finish on Friday doesn't mean it's the end of that relationship. So that's thank you for that. Now, Lloyd, you one of the things that's really important for perhaps the audience and the group that's listening and those who will follow up is to understand kind of what's coming. What are some of the things that, again, you're a bit on the cutting edge with XR, VR, and I know you're involved directly in our XR, VR kind of work that we're doing. But what other kinds of technologies and transformations are you seeing coming over the horizon that we need to think about as either as alumni or as me, as the head of the school? What would you advise both them and me on what's coming?
Yeah, and oh man, it's such an exciting period. And I say this all the time, but we're limited by our imaginations now, not by the technology. And I think that's the first time since I first started programming in the 80s that I've been able to see that transformation where if you can think of it, it can be done. And to give you some examples, like the way we're seeing machine learning transforming the way medical image diagnostic works is phenomenal. I mean, they're able to catch using AI breast cancer much earlier because it's able to read out of an image a way a person just can't. It finds correlations that we miss because it's looking at such a small level. And when we start looking at how something like machine learning can work with blood transfusions or virus breakdowns, like it can identify things that our own human body can't because it can adapt to what's in there. So I think we're going to see machine learning continue to grow. I think what we're going to see is it adapting into more life-saving things as well, which will be really exciting to see. And I think what we're going to see is a blending of all the technology. And Mark Zuckerberg once said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing because it's about 15 pages, I'm summarizing in a couple of sentences, but he said, the reason they were buying Oculus is risk mitigation. He's like, one day people won't have phones, they won't have laptops, they're going to become the pagers of tomorrow. Those technologies are going to go away. It's going to be part of your body or part of your environment, or it's going to become something that you don't carry with you as a physical device anymore. And so he said, if they can't figure out how to get ownership in the adapting technology now, 10 or 15 years from now, they're going to be obsolete. And so they're trying to figure out, how do we stay ahead? How do we stay ahead? And so it's fascinating because I think all of the augmented, virtual, and mixed realities blending together. We use the same tools for all three for development. All three are becoming the same technology. They're moving into lenses, which makes some people uncomfortable. I'm going to buy the first mixed reality eyeball lenses that come out. I don't care what they do. I have no fear of the technology. I've also watched enough movies that I know whoever gets the first generation of technology becomes the hero at the end of the movie, because you don't have the alien patch or whatever in your technology. But I think all jokes aside, what we're seeing is a blending of all the technology. I think what we're seeing is mixed reality mixing with AI, mixing with large data sets on these giant cloud servers. Like all of the technology is just combining and combining. And when we start looking at where quantum technology is going to take us and the ability to process information simultaneously, as that becomes normalized, I mean, I just don't know that there's a limit to where we can go with it, speaking to the next 10 to 20 years. But I'm ideating. So for me, I think that limit just never
it's
goes
great,
away.
Lloyd, and I know and I know you, and I know where you're thinking and where you're playing, but you're also, to be fair, you're also being very practical. You're also saying, what is it that I can do today in the
Oh,
world
yeah.
of XR, VR to help people who are looking for that next step? And that's why we've engaged you to work
Yeah,
on some of that programming. I'm
absolutely.
going to come back. I'm going to come back to Silvia for a second, and I what there's two sort of questions, and it spawned from what Charmaine had said about the nature of the boot camp. What did you find? You've done training in your lives. You had education. You've been through the journey. What was the boot camp? What was it like in terms of its way of teaching that you felt was familiar, or more importantly, what was different about it, and what worked for you?
Well, so I would say that the bootcamp is divided kind of like in two big realms. One is the technical, and one is the soft skills. So one is brain toy, and the other is the Insection U team, right? So first of all, it was my first ever experience doing virtual classroom. So it was for me kind of like, okay, get to know how to manage the all these applications, Zoom, Team, Google Meet, and whatnot. So then the part of the technical side, what I found is that our instructor comes from working experience. Like, he is not the typical instructor that you that at least I used to have in the university, where there is a teacher that teaches you and it's been all the theory and is great in explaining things. What I found in this bootcamp, which I like, is that there are teachers, the instructors on both sides, the technical and the soft. They are people that are really working on or have working experience, and it's very relevant to our bootcamp. So I found that fascinating, that we were having straight from the working environment to us, serve in with the help of a virtual classroom. I don't know if that answered.
No, it's wonderful. I mean, you brought up something that I think is very important, that we've thought a lot about, and our partners at Inception U, who I've known for a long time, and Brain Toy, they're just wonderful people, and it's the way we want to work at SADT and SAIT and DX Hub is with our partners, and because of what you said, that real world, very, very relevant, hands-on. But the thing that you also mentioned is this notion, Charmaine, I want to get your reaction to this, is we were very deliberate in this notion that there is a difference between the awareness and mindset versus the technical skills, and that in order for us to be ready for what's coming, we need to get our brains ready for learning in new ways. Charmaine, not to put words in your mouth, but how was that experience of the soft and hard skills that Silvia talks about, and did that work for you?
Yeah, it was good. They were very separate. Like Inception U classes were completely separate from Brain Toy. They didn't really integrate with each other, which I wish they did a little bit more.
A little bit more.
Yeah. So Brain Toy was the technical aspect of it, and the instructors for Brain Toy were very passionate, and that came off in the class. And I found that all of everyone in our class were very driven. As this class is for mid-career professionals, everyone's very motivated to get things done. So that helped it being online, because I was a little worried about it being online, but everyone's energy just helped with the motivation.
Do you think it would have been a different course or boot camp experience in person, or would you expect going forward that we would have both? Or what's your thought on that, Charmaine?
I think it would be very similar actually, because of all of the lectures were, they were live lectures for one. They were very engaging. We all had our cameras on. We all participated in discussions. We did breakout rooms. So it was very similar to what I feel like it would have been like in-person class.
Okay. And so coming back just to Silvia for a second, what do you think? Because I asked Charmaine this, I asked her about her job next and what she wants to do. What's next for you, do you think, Silvia, in terms of your journey? You heard Lloyd talk about a very incredible future. Do you feel ready to kind of take on that future? And what's next for you?
Well, thank you so much for the question. It's a really interesting question. And well, what I'm thinking is that I will keep applying for tech jobs. Probably 2 weeks ago is when I really started applying, and I felt really weird in the sense that there were many, how do you call it, positions that they were asking for that unicorn. But then thanks to our soft skill part of the bootcamp, where we have Charmaine, and she gave us lots of information about, these job postings, how to demystify them. Some of them, they're looking for these little things, and even she mentioned that to focus on certain skills on the job posting that you feel like you can do a really good job. On the other hand, of course, there is that discouraging part that most of the jobs, they say, oh, you should know this language or that language, or, but what I found with the bootcamp, as Charmaine mentioned, even though that we touched the Python just 4 classes, and it was really, really fast, in the sense that it was just to get familiar, to get to know the language, the lingo, what libraries that it use. I found that if I have the chance, I will probably enroll into a Python course, just to kind of like not to lose momentum. But on the other hand, I just don't want that to refrain me from keep applying for other jobs where I should feel that I can be a data scientist or a data analyst, or I think I can be also a technical project manager. Why not? I bring the skills from project management. So now that I know how a machine learning process works, so I feel more confident about it.
That was such a wonderful answer. I think Lloyd's looking for project management. He was struggling a bit there to define the new version of project management. Anyways, Lloyd, meet Silvia. I'm just kidding. I don't want to do that. All good. But part of what I hear you saying, Silvia, and I want to get Lloyd to talk about this a little bit, is it's kind of lit up a bit of a fuse in you and saying, okay, this isn't the end. This is the end of the beginning, right? You're just beginning this journey. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that's a fair statement. I just I'm right now like ready to face the world in a different with a different colors on different palettes. Before I was kind of like afraid, and now I feel like, you know what, bring it on.
Bring it on. Game on. Charmaine, same for you a little bit. I don't want to put words. If you don't, that's good. But how do you feel?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think this is the beginning. There's a lot more steps, a lot more learning, and I think we just need to continue to upskill and see what comes.
So thank you, and thank you both for those answers, and I appreciate they're quite personal, but you absolutely nailed it. Lloyd, now, as I want you to wear your employer hat, and you've got Charmaine and Silvia, you've got a bunch of people here. Silvia mentioned that often our job descriptions are discouraging to those who have parts of the puzzle. What do you think you need to do, if anything, to think about your future? People coming into your quickly growing company, which is going to be huge, and what do you think you need to do as a receiver of new talent in terms of welcoming the kind of transitioning? And again, not to put you on the spot, but I think by being at the center of it, you may have some insight in there.
Yeah, and I definitely echo both viewpoints. What's interesting to me listening to the conversation is I know that technology can be scary, but what people don't realize is Red Iron's at 20 people, 0 had VR experience before joining Red Iron, including our developers, including our PMs. Not one person had any VR experience or very, very, very little before joining the company. And companies like Red Iron, we invest in people based on what we think is going to complement our skill set and bring something new. One of the amazing leaders I worked under when I was at Smart Technologies told me once, if you should hire people who think the opposite of you, because if you want somebody who thinks the exact same, you might as well just save the money and work a longer day. And I thought that was such a good point. So if I wanted to worry about the technology side, I would just work a longer day and finish the project the way I want. But what I need is people that I can trust to take work off my plate and, meet with a team, build a team and figure it out together. And I think what I kind of hope, and I'm talking about what my expectations are on other leaders in the industry, is to stop expecting perfection and start looking at people who are trying their best and give them the tools to get ahead on their own. I don't want them to get there as fast as me. I just want them to get there with the same quality. And that takes time and experience. And what ends up happening is a year or two down the line, now we have people who, when they started, would take a week for something that would take me a day. Now they're getting it done in 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, how is that even possible if it's taking me a day and I've been doing this for so long? And I think that as an industry, what I'm really hoping is that employers start looking at the possibility, not just the paperwork of the person. And I think we're starting to see that in a lot of the companies, and a lot of the companies that are coming to Calgary are starting to embody that a little bit more. We see that with Finger Food and Unity purchased them, and now they're getting nice and big, and they're looking at talent in terms of future capacity. There's companies all over the province and all over the city that are coming here, not for the talent we have today, but what we can turn them into. And so I think and this is an interesting topic because I'm part of the YYC Design and Development Slack group, where there's a lot of web developers in there looking for work, and they collaborate and they're trying to build a little industry together, and it's fantastic. And one of the discussions that went on in there between about 50 people for 4 days was job descriptions. Whenever a job description says, I want a full stack developer, what are you actually expecting? They need to know backend, they need to know servers, databases, web development, data formats, and they need to stop looking at it that way and start being a little clearer, because I don't need, even if I'm working on a Python project, I don't necessarily need somebody who knows Python. I need somebody who knows logic. And so I tend to, when we write our job descriptions, I don't put the terminology in there. I don't want them to worry about the tools. I want them to understand the goal. So it would be I need somebody who's comfortable working in a hospital environment. You're going to be creating software towards dementia care patients that is being used in this way. My expectations are that you understand logic pretty well, that you're going to be patient with the patients and that kind of thing. What's interesting, though, is the older, more experienced developers shy away because they're going, oh, my keywords aren't in there. And then the younger developers are excited because they're not as worried, but they have the same worry where it's we get into this worry of keyword terminology, and it's well, I was taught Python and it doesn't say a language. What if I apply and don't get it? And it's well, what if you apply and do get it, is my perspective. So I don't know how to fix that from the employer side. I know that our job descriptions are either vague or overly complex. And 9 times out of 10, the person we hire isn't going to match that description anyways. Many times, the last 2 times we went to hire somebody, we ended up hiring 6 people instead of 2, because we interviewed and we thought, 4 people were fantastic that had skill sets that we could use down the road. So let's hire them now and get them trained up. Some who were a designer that had nothing to do with some hard VR development core thing we were building, just because they were a good applicant. And so I guess I would just say, don't be afraid to apply, and keep in mind that there are open-minded startups and companies out there that will put faith in you based on you, not based on just your knowledge. So
it's an inspiration for the future of work. It really is. And I'd like to just pause and talk, if you don't mind, just for a minute on a bit of our philosophy, because I just want to pull in some of the thoughts that I'm hearing. And I really appreciate it. You guys have been super, super frank and open and honest, and quite frankly, quite inspiring for me as somebody who's tasked with the responsibility for kind of figuring this stuff out. We take a very, very broad ecosystem thought around this. And what I mean by that is, Charmaine, I was listening to you and talking about the journey you take from the moment you left your job to the moment you started in the boot camp, and then what happens next. And one of the things that SADT wants to do, and DX Hub and SAIT, is to condition the entire ecosystem to think about this isn't just a training issue or a reskilling issue. It's about the way we think of work. Because if I don't get enough Lloyds, I'm going to get you all excited, and I'm going to give you some knowledge. And if I don't enable Silvia to kind of find the next course or go somewhere else to kind of deepen her passion, if we don't do all of that together, it's not going to work. We're not going to have the speed that we need to move through it. And so the lessons I'm hearing here is everything from discussions with energy companies in terms of their employees and helping them reskill into what's next, to people who get laid off or job changed, but then more importantly to the new companies who are hiring people. We have to have those conversations, but there's a big gap in between that, and we have to make sure that we don't lose people along the way. And so one of the things that I want to just get your comments, and probably all three of you on this one, is for the people listening. What resources have you learned about what's happening in Calgary right now? What are some of the things that you would advise people to help them on their journey as they kind of say, okay, I'm going to change my way. And what would you advise them to do next or continue to do? Is there any thoughts on that, Silvia or Charmaine?
The number one thing I would say is to network, is to reach out and talk to people, even if, but try to make meaningful connections. Don't just find someone on LinkedIn and be like, hey, like just tell them a little bit about yourself and maybe ask them a question. I find the tech community is very accommodating, and they're very it's a new thing, it's growing. So everyone who knows what they're doing is so willing to be mentors. So I would just say, don't be afraid to reach out and just get started.
There's a high degree of trust and collaboration, isn't there, in the new hires?
Definitely.
Would you agree, Silvia? Would you?
Definitely. Through the boot camp, one of our classmates, she shared one of the Slack channels on the tech community, and we were, very happy to join that channel. And I found that the tech community is so welcoming. They meet every week and they tackle, things that are important to everybody that is right now pivoting into the tech industry, since how to find the jobs and how to work on your LinkedIn profile, how to do the networking, as Charmaine just mentioned. And I found these things are really, really nice. Even they have mentioned about the jobs description, as Lloyd said, that, how to navigate with them, what to look at things. So I found that the collaboration, that the spirit that I see myself, I feel welcomed. I feel like if I have any question, I can just reach to them, just in an informal way, but it will be very effective. So that's what I found. Through the bootcamp, I got into this beautiful community.
As a founder of the Rainforest Movement, I can tell you that warms my heart. So I'm glad to hear that. the concept of trust and openness and pay it forward is finding its way throughout. And Lloyd, I'm going to give you the last word before we turn it over to some questions. There's a number of questions it looks like, and I'm going to get Madeline to come back in and just help. But Lloyd, what are some of the things that you would advise people to do to continue or begin their journey, and what resources do you think you see available out there to help people along?
Yeah, and I love what was just shared. I completely agree. I think having a sense of community is so important. Having a group of developers or like-minded people or project managers that you can talk to openly and transparently, because we also have bad days too. And as a founder, there's days where we lose like a really big project to somebody and it's so frustrating. And having somebody else that you can call who's gone through it, who's like, there, Lloyd, it'll be okay. You need that sometimes. And I think when we're looking at learning in general, you need that path forward. You need to look at what you learn best. And I'm not talking about like coming out with the best marks. I'm talking about your most comfortable way of learning and expand that. So if you like coding at 3 a.m, talking on a Discord group, hanging out with game developers, do that. It's going to move you along so fast. And one of our founding principles, there's a talk from a guy named Mick Gordon, who's a music player. I won't go into the full thing, but one of the things he says multiple times throughout there, that's one of my embodiments of how we approach everything in life, is putting courage ahead of confidence. So confidence is when you do the same thing over and over again and you can predict the outcome. Courage is when you're not worried about the outcome, you're trying for the first time and you're just excited to be doing it. And that's Red Iron. That's why Red Iron has expanded the way it has, is because we'll apply on, working on a dementia care thing that we're not equipped for, because I know we can find people to teach us or help us or build it. And I think that one of the challenges in life is the idea of going for a 4-year degree and coming out. I mean, everybody else has been in the industry for 4 years at that point. So you're now competing in a different way. The way we teach and learn, there's still value there, but it's changing. And I think that when I talk about courage, one of the things we have the opportunity to do now that we've never had before is take a 10-week boot camp, see if you like it, and learn enough that you can do your first couple projects and come out. So you're not spending 4 years in school, you're spending 10 weeks in. And, you might come out of it and be like, I wish I didn't take Python. I hated it. But now you've only lost 10 weeks of your life and you have a skill you didn't have before. And I think that's an opportunity that's huge. And I wish we had that when I came out of school. When I came out, there was only comp sci. Everybody went into comp sci. And didn't matter if you're a programmer, it didn't matter if you're going to do tech support. It was comp sci. It was the same program for everybody. And I dropped out the first month because I just couldn't stand it anymore. And so I think that adaptiveness is really key, and boot camps are a phenomenal way. And I think a small way to start learning, find a group and hit up YouTube. There's no harm in learning some things off YouTube and just trying and learn what machine learning is. How does it work? It's fascinating. And if you find that you're really passionate about it, now's the time to go and explore it, because it's going to take off over the next 5 years. If you get in front of it and you're passionate about it, imagine 5 years from now when it hits off really big where you're going to be, right? So
wonderful, all of you. Thank you, Lloyd, for that, and Silvia and Charmaine. There's a bunch of questions in the chat, and Madeline's going to steer us. Over to you.
I'll jump in now, and I'll quickly. We've got 10 minutes here, so we'll do a sort of fire answer questions. So the first question we have up here, I think we've touched on, right? So it was the conversation around tech background, prerequisites, requirements. I think Silvia and Charmaine answered that really great, and knowing that it was really varied. And so this is something that's open to people of all different levels. And that's the answer we'll stick with that one.
Yeah.
Cool. There's a question for Silvia and Charmaine. Now that you've completed the program, your career prospects, do you feel qualified? I think we also touched on that too, right? Of you both feeling like you still want to keep learning, but you feel like you have the support that you need to find that. The other thing I want to comment on that for all the alumni on this call, Career Advancement Services is here for you, right? So whatever journey you are in, if you're taking programs, if you finished your programs, as a member of the alumni community, you have the support of Career Advancement Services forever, always, right? So we're here to help you with that. Another one for Silvia and Charmaine. What are some of your biggest takeaways? What did you like and dislike? So maybe let's give each you a minute to just do what was your biggest like, biggest dislike.
Okay,
Silvia.
I can start. Well, my biggest like was to precisely experience the soft skills part of the bootcamp. I found that very fascinating. The teaming in Section U was really, really awesome. I found it very, very, that was my best. And the other is what you didn't like. Is that
Yeah.
what you?
Yeah.
I would say that because this was my first time using virtual classroom. What I didn't like was the fact that sometimes in the class, people doesn't allow the teacher to finish the train of thought. So people tend to jump in and interrupt, where I haven't experienced that in a really classroom set, but it's more about the format rather than the content. So that will be the thing that I didn't like.
Great feedback.
Charmaine?
Yeah, I would say it's very similar. The Inception U soft skills courses really helped me learn about myself, which was really awesome to know the skills that I didn't realize I had. I really liked the brain toy aspect of it because they were very thorough with teaching us machine learning. Although Python was very quick, it just encouraged us to learn a little bit more about it if we wanted to. I think what I disliked, I think I mentioned this before, is how they didn't really, they complemented each other, but I just wish that they integrated more with each other and yeah.
Super
feedback. That's good to know.
So I guess this, to Silvia's point, and Jim, I guess it's a question for you. When COVID's no longer a risk, will there be on-campus classes for these, or will we continue in a virtual environment? Or do we even have an answer for that?
Well, it's a great question. We don't have a full answer to that.
Yeah.
I'm honestly want to get some of the feedback and make a decision. We have an amazing school right downtown. We have lots of spaces for it. We may do some A/B testing on that. We may try running it, some in person and some not, just to see. But I think the jury's still out on that one.
Good. Okay. There's a question. Is this similar to the ADAPT program? What's the difference between the programs? And is this just open to SAIT alumni?
So no, it's absolutely not just open to SAIT alumni. It's open to anybody, but SAIT alumni are perfectly positioned. ADAPT is a program that we partnered with Ryerson University out of Toronto, and it's a program which has received funding directly from from Skills Canada, in a program that's targeted at people who are just out of school, so they've just graduated and not working, and so it's very, very specific around that target audience, underserved or potentially areas where jobs haven't actually had an opportunity, versus the career reshift that the boot camps are about. Having said that, though, there are similarities to the programming, though not as deep as we're talking about here in some of the machine learning. But some of the softer skills, some of the resume skills, some of the things around what is digital and what does it mean, but it's targeted at a different audience.
Good, thank you. What are the next boot camps that we're setting up, and will there be another machine learning one again soon?
The machine learning one for sure. We've really enjoyed that. Again, it's funny. Scheduling is a bit of a tricky business right now, as you can imagine, with COVID and timing. The demand is there, so we're trying to line that up. But we've been very, very happy with the machine learning process, and with some of the feedback that we're getting, we'll modify it. So yes, that's happening. The next boot camp coming up, and Lloyd should be smiling at this one. We're doing a really interesting boot camp on this one. This is a combined product management combined with VR development. So imagine in product development, as you go through your boot camp, one of the most important things with product is you need a project. You need something to do. Well, guess what? it's going to be a VR project. So we're going to take two different boot camps, a VR boot camp and a product development boot camp, and they're going to merge so that they work with each other. I think our developer on that and part of our team, Laura Buses, who's just brilliant, is really nailed that one. And I love what she's doing with that. We're working with Red Iron, we're working with a bunch of folks, but it's this idea of this merge. So this is an intensive one. This one's going to really test both product design people, but also virtual reality. So that's the next one. We've got a data one in planning. We're looking at blockchain. We're looking at a couple of more. We got a lot in the queue right now.
Busy. I think you've touched on this already. It's asking, will there be changes implemented in the second cohort? Any learnings from the first cohort, right? You've said here that you're taking all the feedback and making sure that that's implemented in what we're moving forward with.
100%. We're going to get Charmaine and Silvia to teach part of it. They didn't realize that we had actually, that was part of their agreement. And Lloyd is going to be the student, so we're going to switch it all up. But no, we will, in all seriousness, these programs are new, they're dynamic, and they absolutely rely on the feedback from folks like Charmaine and Silvia, and really appreciate them kind of putting their hand up and saying, yes. So there will be some changes. We're pretty satisfied. I mean, again, we're not perfectly satisfied, but we like what happened here. I think we're pretty pleased.
Good. So I will leave this is our last one that we'll touch on. What programming language do you think will be the best to have experience in the coming years? I don't know who's the best to weigh in on this, or if there's a good answer for this one. Lloyd?
I'm pointing over at Lloyd.
Yeah, I'm good with this one. It's fascinating because one of the questions is whether or not there even will be programming languages as we move forward. Like when we talk about the VR side, you can program using node-based programming in all of the engines we use to build VR. We're seeing that in robotics where it's block-built or graph-based programming, node-based programming. We're seeing that in machine learning. The idea of understanding logic is becoming more important than languages. Today, though, those languages, each language is kind of taking control of a different industry, but they're merging together. There's a coding standard, without going into too much detail, that is slowly making all the languages look the same. That's why you'll see that like JavaScript has become TypeScript, and it looks a lot like C#, which looks a lot like Java, which looks a lot like ActionScript 3. And now Python's starting to adapt, and you're going to see that the language format for all of those, there's a high level view, I'm talking about industry wide, to make those languages almost identical. Right now, it's a syntax difference, that's it. So
I'm going to jump in and say, completely agree. One of the things that we're looking at very carefully is this, there's an entire movement called low code, that really looks at the integration of using really platform APIs to bring things together from a business process, marketing and product design and development. And it's a low code, no code concept, which is really using the existing capabilities of platforms themselves to merge together. And so for reskilling, upskilling, that may be an interface to get people used to the stitching together of integrated products versus a pure native coding base, which is maybe a subsequent area to go to. So I don't know if that answers. So we got lots of opinions, as you can tell on that one.
It's great. I think we'll all just sort of stay tuned and see where all of that goes. Thank you for taking the time to answer all those questions. What an interesting conversation. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope everybody else on the call learned a lot. I'd like to thank Jim, Lloyd, Silvia, and Charmaine for taking time to be a part of this evening. To everybody who joined us, thank you for attending, and thank you for providing all of your thoughtful questions. If you have other questions regarding alumni career support or SADT, or if there's something you'd like to see discussed throughout our What Works series, we're covering all sorts of subject matter from adapting to digital all the way to EDI and just how to even use career advancement services here at SAIT. So if you have a great idea, email us at alumni@sait.ca. We'll be sharing more information about the next What Works event. It will be about constructing your career. So how do you sort of plan your career from a values perspective. So that will be coming up next month. So stay tuned for more information on that one. And with that, have a wonderful night and take care. Thanks for joining, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.